I don't think he's going to pull all troops out, but whatever. You're on your own.
I think it would be fine for Europe and fine for the United States and fine for the world. When the Warsaw Pact military alliance of the Soviet Union was unilaterally disbanded in 1990 by President Gorbachev of the Soviet Union, that was the opportunity to end NATO as well. Instead, the neocons made NATO an instrument of their delusion of U.S. global hegemony. So instead of disbanding NATO, which would have made sense because NATO was no longer needed to defend against a no longer existent Soviet Union, NATO became an instrument of U.S. power expansion. It finally led to wars in Georgia and Ukraine because the U.S. pushed so far that the Russians said, no, we're not going to have you, the U.S., on our borders militarily. Something completely sensible and obvious to generations of American diplomats, but they were overridden by the neocons, by the presidents that went along with this, and Europe bought into it in a kind of fatuous way. NATO doesn't need to exist for European security. Yes, by the way, there are real issues for European security that need to be attended. There is the question of the nuclear umbrella because we live in a nuclear age. France has nuclear weapons. Somehow Europe would need to make that a European-wide deterrent. This is complicated but feasible in my view. Europe has real issues on its border with Russia, how to stay out of each other's way. This involves the Baltic states, which are, on the one hand, they have significant Russian minority populations, meaning Russian-speaking ethnic Russians in Estonia and Latvia. At the same time, those two countries, because they have the United States behind them, are the most vulgar and Russophobic in their rhetoric right now, in the hate speech against Russia. My advice is, if you have a significant Russian minority population, if you're on the border of Russia, drop the hate speech and start the diplomatic speech. Not to be naive, but stop the hate, because the hate puts you in increased vulnerability. And they cannot figure that out, how to live next to their neighbor. It's possible. There's a lot of history about how to do that. One approach, by the way, that Ukraine should have taken, and that was the lesson of history of Austria, was neutrality. When Austria declared its neutrality in 1955 as part of a deal for the Soviet Union to leave Austria and reestablish a sovereign Austria after World War II, the Soviets left and they never bothered Austria again. Austria became an extraordinarily successful country.